Welcome to Faith, Hope, and Stories. There are many people in our coastal community planting seeds of faith, hope, and love. Some you may know already, and others you don't know yet. They're your neighbors, and they have a calling, a mission, a purpose. These are their stories. Faith, Hope, and Stories is a production of Epworth United Methodist Church in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Today on Faith, Hope, and Stories, I'm excited to welcome Rabbi Julie Hilton Danan. She's the first full-time rabbi of Seaside Jewish community here in Rehoboth Beach. I first came across Rabbi Julie as I was curating Epworth's Instagram feed. I noticed her photos of the sea, nature, birds, butterflies, and other living things, and that she was called the Nature Rabbi, which I found intriguing. She comes from Utopia. Well, she is really from San Antonio, but her parents bought 5 acres along the Sabinal River in the Texas Hill Country, this tiny magical place called Utopia, when she was 12, and it helped form her. And I can understand that. The Texas Hill Country is an untamed and stunningly beautiful land where nature still calls the shots. My family still lives there, and it's in my DNA. I don't want to spend a lot of time on a formal biography because I have so many questions.
Okay.
But she was ordained through the ALEPH rabbinic program in 2000 and earned a PhD in Hebrew studies from the University of Texas at Austin, my alma mater. Hook 'em horns.
Right.
She served congregations in Texas, California, New York, and now here. Rabbi Julie, I'm so intrigued by your focus on Jewish spirituality and its connection to the natural world. But let's go back a ways first.
Okay.
Yeah. Tell us about growing up in Texas and specifically growing up Jewish in Texas.
For me, I could say my own experience of growing up in San Antonio in the 1960s and 70s. You know, that's might not be the same as growing up in Houston or Dallas, but we had a small, that time and for many years to follow, I think there were about 15,000 Jewish people in the city. So it was a very tight-knit community and people tended to affiliate and be involved. And I grew up at Temple Beth El, which is a Reform synagogue, which was one of the founding congregations of the then Union of American Hebrew Congregations, now the Union for Reform Judaism. And in my own school, at my public school in Alamo Heights, I think my sister and I, we were the only Jewish kids that I knew about in our elementary school. But when we got to junior high and high school, I knew some other Jewish kids. I was very involved in, in my teen years in the youth group, which is SAFTY, San Antonio Federation of Temple Youth, or the Reform Movement. And we were TOFTY, Texas, Oklahoma, and NIFTY is the national one. So I was quite involved with that. And I guess, how did I feel growing up like that? I mean, I would say I did not experience a lot of anti-Semitism. There was the occasional remark or something like that. It was not a daily occurrence by any means. And I definitely felt I was in a minority. Especially when I was growing up, we were still saying the Lord's Prayer every morning at school, in our public school, as well as, celebrating Christmas in all the classrooms. So I would stand there with my little menorah in the front of the room telling the children about Hanukkah, which may have been the beginning of my rabbinic career. I don't know. Yeah.
Instructing.
Yes.
Tell me about the ranch. Tell me about Utopia.
Wow.
It sounds so beautiful.
It's really a real place, Utopia, Texas. Now, when we were there, the population was 500, but I don't know, maybe it's gone down. Like here, people say I have a beach house. California, they say I have a cabin in the mountains. Whatever people call it, we called it a ranch if you had a little country place that you went on weekends. And my dad was a pediatrician, and he liked to get out of town to avoid being called when he was off duty or whatever. I feel this was the place my soul was really born. And I had a very formative spiritual experience there at a young age that I can tell you about if you want.
Oh, absolutely.
And I spent a lot of time just contemplating just sitting on a cliff over the Sabinal. We called it Sabinal back then, but the Sabinal River, and just really absorb. And it's an incredibly beautiful area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about that
So,
spiritual
okay, so I'll
experience.
tell you the experience I had that really has stayed with me my whole life. I guess when we bought this, or my parents bought this property, I was about 12 years old. So I was like what you'd call the traditional about bat mitzvah age, or depending when you observe that. But I did not have a bat mitzvah till I was 16. That's another story. So we had first started going there in the winter, which is a Texas winter. It wasn't too brutal, but it was sort of brown and gray.
Yeah.
And then I guess we hadn't gone for a couple of weeks because when we came back, it was really spring, but we didn't realize it yet because we got there at night. And in the morning, I got up before the rest of the family and I just like went outside in the backyard where there was a gate, and the gate had two like blooming bushes on the side of it. And when I opened that gate to go down to the Sabinal River, there's 42 stone and then wood steps leading down to the riverside. It was a world transformed. Everything was green, intensely green, and these like vines with flowers beginning to, kind of just were spilling down the cliff. And these giant cypress trees there by the water were green. And I could hear, I guess the insects, the birds, the doves. And I just I made my way down to the river, and I was really in awe. And as I took it all in, there was a moment that I felt all the boundaries disappeared. They call this, of course, I didn't know the expression, but like unitive consciousness, that I felt no boundary between me and everything else there in nature. And just, I was part of it. It was part of me. It was so wordless, sacred, and awesome. And then I felt, I don't know how long it was, right? It could have been an eons, it could have been a few, a half a minute, I don't know. But I stood there, and then I felt like I was kind of emerging from this altered consciousness. I realized that I wanted to say something holy because I had just had a very holy experience. Like I wanted to say a prayer or something, and I did not have a lot of Jewish education or know like what's the correct blessing to say. So I said the holiest words I knew, the Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hear, O Israel. The way we said it then is the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And that was like my offering back. And you know what? It's interesting because years later, I had about a decade of becoming kind of Orthodox, at which time I actually, as in my 20s, like I had the thought, gosh, I should have said this blessing you say for the wonders of nature. But later on, I realized I said the exact perfect thing because it was all about unity, and the divine being part of everything. Although it took until I was 36 and went into the ALEPH program that it began to be really, I guess, a more regular part of my life experience. So anyway.
But that must have really influenced you. That unitive experience must have influenced the rest of your life.
It really did. And well, there's so many directions I could go with it, but I'll tell you that many years later, of course, when I was already a rabbi, because I was living out on the West Coast in Northern California, and I went up to Ashland, Oregon, where we had an annual retreat at one of my friends' congregations, and my teacher, Rabbi Zalman Chachter Shalomi, would come, and there was a Sufi teacher who came, and we did this kind of Sufi zikr, this sacred dance that they do, but we did it Hebrew and Arabic. It was a very amazing interfaith synergy. And as we did it, and then we stood still, I really felt myself back in that moment. I didn't just think about it. It was like I was there. That was a really pretty amazing experience too. But anyway, it was a moment that, transformed me. And I don't think I told people, I don't think I went home and said, wow, I just had a cosmic experience. I just kept it. And
how do you come back from something like that? Just like step back into reality. That would be, at least you're at least you were in Utopia.
Right. Well, I was just a kid, so I didn't really analyze it. I mean, I'd always been, even as a child, I realized I like things that were sort of enchanted or magical. I had a big imagination. And I realized even as a child that of course, I didn't use the word consciousness, but the outlook, the consciousness that a child has is different than an adult. And I knew that it was coming, that I would grow up and lose that. I just, somehow I knew that and regretted the idea that would happen. But then, from this kind of more sacred experience, I realized that adults could also have, a more open appreciation and wonder at the world. Now, of course, later on, when I got into the ALEPH program, when I was already 36 years old, and I had already been learning a lot about Judaism and spirituality, I became much more deliberate about how I incorporate those experiences, those mystical experiences. And my teacher, Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shlomi, once said that everybody has these experiences, or you have some kind of experience of awesomeness or wonder. And I know when I ask congregants, have you had, such an experience? Basically, everyone's had some time that they were outside their normal, just everyday frame of mind. It could have been a birth. It could have been a death. It could be an amazing moment in nature. For many Jewish people, it's like they went to Jerusalem, right? They went to Israel, or it was, just one of those Grand Canyon moments, I guess. And he said that we all have them. And of course, some people told me amazing stories beyond that, some amazing stories. He suggested that, by having spiritual practices and by having that spiritual language, then we can, it's not like grasping onto it, but it's something that we can call upon or we can revisit at moments that we need to. So another teacher, that Rabbi Miles Krausen, told me, this is like a deposit in your spiritual bank account. You should remember these, write them down, find a way to keep them so you can draw on them, especially when your wells run dry, when you feel you need a boost. And actually, I wrote something about this on my blog on Substack, like, where do you keep your spiritual treasures? And I try to do that. I think being in the ALEPH Rabbinic program, which is very spiritually oriented and God-centered, we learned a lot of the traditional mystical and Kabbalistic Jewish language for different experiences. And that was very helpful because there is an expression, this is Aramaic, it's from the Jewish mysticism. Mochin de Gadlut is like expansive consciousness. Mochin de Katnut is like your ordinary little regular consciousness. And you can't go around all day like,
never get
all the time, right? You're not meant to be. And that was the important thing, that in Jewish tradition, the idea isn't just to have the experiences, they're wonderful, but just like Moses, you have to come down the mountain.
Right.
And you want to bring things back. And we really did work on that a lot. Like when we had these retreats, we'd talk about when you go home, the other people didn't have that experience. And you're kind of all, excited, and you have to be able to find ways, to stay in touch with what you experienced and let it enrich your life, but also, be able, it's not just about that. It's how it motivates you to relate to other people and to do the right things in the world.
Yeah, I've been on a few silent retreats, Ignatian retreats, and I've had a bad reentry almost every time. And it almost got wiped. The experience almost got wiped out, even though I journaled my butt off during the experience. But
even Moses had a difficult reentry, when he was up on Mount Sinai and came back, and people had the golden calf. So it's
talk about a downer.
It can be hard.
How did you find your way to Rehoboth? You can tell the short version or the long version.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, the short version of the long version is that I grew up in San Antonio. I was born in New Jersey, but when I was 2, we moved to San Antonio as my father was in the Air Force at that time. It was during the Vietnam era, and he was drafted as a doctor. He was a pediatrician, so he obviously was just there on the base. And then my parents stayed there, so I grew up there, and then lived in all these different places, which that would be too long of a story. But when I was very young, I like to say, in my college years, I lived in Israel for 4 years. My husband was born in Marrakesh, Morocco, and moved to Israel when he was 12. And then came back to Texas, lived then in Northern California, and then in Chico, California, lived in New York State.
And you were already a rabbi at this point.
By the time I moved to California, I was a rabbi.
Yeah, okay.
And then for various reasons, moved to the East Coast and lived in the Hudson Valley in Pleasantville, New York. And then during the pandemic, my job there kind of like dried up. I could say that my congregation had financial struggles, and they told me that they could provide my job for another year. So I had a whole year, but then I needed to find something else, and they were going to like move on, you know? So I thought at that point that I would just retire young, because it's the middle of the or the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I was like, how will I ever find another job at my age? And so we decided for various reasons to move to the Philly area, close by, but more affordable in different reasons. And then after we moved there, 6 months later, I got the job here in Rehoboth.
Wow.
I knew the Rabbi Emerita, Rabbi Beth Cohen. Now that time, the synagogue had like a interim rabbi, Kevin Bernstein, but she and I had served together on a professional board, and she just told me about, this is a job opening, as a very long process of different interviews on Zoom and all. And then I did come in person and do a weekend, like it's a whole audition that you do for the finalists, and then they did offer me the job here, so I took.
And you're their first full-time rabbi.
I am their first full-time. They're calling religious leader and the rabbi, basically, because they've had also cantors be the religious leaders. But I am the first full-time person.
Now, you've been in communities with a larger Jewish population. What's it like to be a spiritual leader here?
Well, I would say, although the communities, first of all, this congregation is the largest congregation that I have served, which has several hundred members. The other congregations in which I served were maybe 100 families. They were small congregations. One in Texas, in California, where I also was a university lecturer there, and then in New York too. So being here actually, it's wonderful, because right now this whole area is growing. I mean, it has growing pains too, but there are many people coming here, especially to retire, and then there are other younger people coming, and so it's exciting to be in a place where things are growing. So I do feel there's a very active Jewish community, because we're making a lot. It's not just a synagogue. It really is, it's called Seaside Jewish Community. So it is also a cultural center, and people are very involved in community service and social action, social justice, and cultural events and so forth.
How do you incorporate your love of photography and nature into your work here, your teaching?
Well, you said I'm called the Nature Rabbi, and we're not going to disclose if I made that up myself, but however, people did call me stuff like that, because that's what I like to do. I definitely have been incorporating a lot of different ways, depending where I live. And I think during the pandemic, it helped expand it, because you couldn't do a lot of indoor things. So I was there in the Hudson Valley, and I started leading what I called soul strolls. I
was going to ask you about those.
And I had a special hike for bar and bat mitzvah students at a place called 13 Bridges, where you could walk over these 13 bridges, which was very symbolic of becoming bar mitzvah at age 13. And I you did a photography, like a nature photography, with a professional photographer who had been my photography teacher while I did different nature teachings. And here I've done the soul strolls have become a very popular part of.
How do they work?
I do. Well, we do here at Seaside offer different styles of worship. And worship and spiritual practice, because we are an inclusive, non-denominational, non-affiliated congregation. So people have come from maybe conservative Judaism, not politically conservative, but it's a religious movement, Reform, Reconstructionist, Renewal, and maybe some Orthodox. So we try to give them different styles and different experiences. So this is one of them, and we'll offer a few times a year a soul stroll, which is usually I'll lead a walk in some natural setting, maybe by the water, and we'll have some kind of, as we walk, we might stop and do a little listening meditation, or to do a little reading, or I might give people a page with these different blessings that you say when you see something amazing, something big or small, or you smell something, because our sages had so many blessings like that. And then usually it's on a Friday early evening, so then at the end we do the prayers to welcome the Sabbath. I usually have LED lights for the candles, and we have the grape juice because we're in the park, or whatever, challah, the bread, and we have a lot of other outdoor experiences of the synagogue does because of our location, like things that take place on the beaches and so on. As you know, from since we have our high holidays at our wonderful friends down the street and our Epworth, they have the big screens there that they use during services, and we have like rotating different pictures, different just nature scenes, kind of calming local nature scenes, pictures that I took. And they're just like background, instead of having like big stained glass windows or something. And that's something that I've incorporated. I provide a lot of nature photography on my online presence, and I have 2 websites with it and social media and whatnot. So
Yeah. Where do you recommend people of any faith start to connect themselves to the spirituality of nature? I mean, we're going to do a birding as a spiritual practice program in the fall, because I feel like birding is, a great way to connect. I mean, there might be somebody listening who's like, wow, I really want to have an experience like she did. How do I even start? Journaling?
Well, are most people listening to this podcast local here?
I have no idea.
Because obviously when you live in a place like the Delaware beaches, it's much easier to commune with nature. You're 5 minutes from the Atlantic Ocean or the Delaware Bay or the Rehoboth Bay. But I remember being in New York, and it wasn't in New York City. It was like, out in the suburbs that I did some outdoor programs for some Jewish educators, and someone said, wow, it's like I haven't been outside and done anything like this for, I don't know, weeks, months. So for people who are here, especially retirees and so on, there's many more opportunities to get outdoors. And I think, there's a Japanese practice called Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing. And I found out it was not an ancient practice, and then it's become really popular around the world as forest bathing. And I'm learning about it, and that's how I got the soul stroll. I did.
Okay.
I incorporated with the soul strolls. So it doesn't have to be a forest, though. It could be, by the beach. If you're here, you go to the state park, you go to different nature. We have national wildlife refuges not too far away. And what I think is like connect with your senses. That's you be open to the awe. They say, I think more and more even for people, you don't have to be a believer in something, but just to be willing to experience awe, because no matter what you believe or what you don't know, that's fine. It's the sense of seeing, it's a sense of feeling small and yet feeling part of everything. So in that sense, feeling large. And what better way than by the sea? I mean, just to feel, one thing I recommend doing is, like, if you can, be barefoot safely. And that often works at the beach, right? To feel your feet planted on the earth, and to just feel your senses, to get in touch with your senses. What do you see? How many things can you hear? What do you feel? Like with the inner feelings you have, but also what do you feel outside? The breeze or the warmth or the coolness. And then what do you smell in the air or around you? And then maybe taste. You might be tasting something or not. And to just get in touch with your senses and slow down. When I would sometimes be out on nature walks at this incredible nature preserve, Rockefeller State Park Preserve in the Hudson Valley where I used to live, I could be seeing the most unbelievable sights for me. I see a deer like wading into the shallow end of the lake among the lily pads, or some amazing bird is out there. Yet people could be walking by just talking on their phone or just chatting. So if you can take the time to put away the devices, obviously, and just open up your senses, I think that's a great way. I mean, for me, photography has been a way. But I would say that, photography could also get between you and nature.
You can get really caught up in gizmos.
Sometimes people,
I do.
Right. Especially with social media. It's like, I got to get this perfect picture of me among the daisies or whatever. So what I try to do is first appreciate and see and, kind of relate, and then take the photo. I mean,
right.
If it's something really happening fast, I can't always do that. Or kind of thank this creature or this place for, my dad used to do that, he would thank, if he picked fruit off a tree, he would like thank the tree. So, so just to stop and see, because I don't want to just objectify. I don't want that. There was a famous Jewish philosopher of the 20th century from Germany, then went to Israel, Martin Buber. He's also beloved of Christians. And he talked about I, it, and I, thou. So I, it is when we sort of objectify what's in our environment, which sometimes we just get through the day that way. It's me and the world. Right. It. But I, thou, or I, you is when I'm really like relating to you, communing with you. And that could be with the creature that I'm taking a photo of. So that's what I try to do.
Okay, I had one last question for you, just about repair the world.
Okay.
Hey, help me out.
Tikkun Olam.
Thank you. I didn't want to butcher the Hebrew.
No, that's fine.
How does you and your own congregation sort of take that out into the world? I know you're involved in many different things. You're involved in the food pantry at Epworth.
Tikkun Olam is a phrase from Jewish tradition that means Olam is the world. Tikkun is like repair, fix. And it's had meanings that have changed over the centuries, over the past couple thousand years. But it's led to, in modern times, indicating really, I guess, social action, making the world a better place, doing your part to make the world better. And that doesn't always mean the big globe, but the world, because our sages also said every human being is an entire world. So if you helped one person, that could be your Tikkun Olam. And sometimes it's fixing something in yourself or in your own, making a repair if you inherited a way of being that's not healthy for the next generation, making a repair to that. So I'm very proud of our congregation, and I cannot take credit for almost any of this, but there's different ways that our congregation does that. I mean, there's internally, people do kindness for one another in the community. but also sometimes someone's new in the community and they've just helped them in their hour of need, in spectacular ways sometimes. Also, there's community service. So we have a community service committee that also, besides reaching inward, reaches outward, and they're doing food pantry, food rescue, the meals at Epworth, the meals for the foreign students that are here, or foreigner that, from abroad students. Oh, and various other community service projects, doing all different collections for different organizations, giving charitable giving to them. And then there's a social justice or Tikkun Olam committee that's focused a little more on the broader social issues. So they will get involved in a myriad of issues. We have some of our members who were the founders of SOA, Speak Out Against Hate, so we're very involved with that. For common sense gun laws and preventing gun violence, for which we've worked with, of course, the pastor, Reverend Vicky and Reverend Bo at the church, at Epworth Church. There's been other things like they've helped to make backpacks for people that are being released from incarceration into the community and don't really have anything. And some people have been involved with assistance to immigrants that, and other issues like that. And then we have sometimes we call it Tikkun Olam Shabbat services, where we have Friday nights that are devoted to these very issues. Like we had the president of Highest Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society speak recently. We're soon having for Juneteenth the executive director of the SDARJ, Southern Delaware Alliance for Racial Justice, Joe Lawson. We started also a Black Jewish allyship group. And of course, I'd be remiss to say if I left out that we just had our annual Pride Shabbat. So that's very important,
Yeah.
For supporting the LGBTQ plus community. Hope I'm not leaving something out, but I just think it's just woven into the fabric of what it means to be Jewish.
That's kind of what I was detecting and getting at. It just seems to be part of the, not the furniture, but just part of the ethic, the ethos, the, world you operate in.
And I think for Jewish people, again, different people have different expressions. For some people, it could be coming to the synagogue and praying. And for some people, it is celebrating the holidays. And for many people, it is doing these acts of social justice or community service, doing a mitzvah. A good deed is a general translation, an imperative to do something to make the world a better place. And tzedakah, righteous charitable giving, and so on. So people have different ways of expressing their Judaism, or multiple ways.
Yes. Well, Rabbi Julie, that's a great note to end on. And I really thank you for your time.
And it's great to meet a fellow Texan. It's once a Texan, always a Texan, right?
Yeah, I'm afraid that's true. It's kind of a love-hate thing sometimes, but it is a special place. And the Hill Country is a special place that I think about a lot. I actually wrote a book, a novel, and it's half of it's set in the Hill Country.
Yeah, San Antonio is a very multicultural city, and I think that influenced me a lot too.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, thank you so much.
Great to spend this time with you.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Faith, Hope, and Stories. This episode was produced by Leanne Walling. For more information on Epworth United Methodist Church, please go to our website at epworth.faith.